My daughter-in-law called me a liability while sitting in my dead husband's favorite chair, then handed me nursing home brochures for places that cost less than her monthly shopping budget. Let me tell you what really happened when my own family tried to throw me away like yesterday's trash. I'm 72 years old, and I thought I'd seen everything, but nothing prepared me for the betrayal that was coming from my own son and his wife. My name is Margaret, and up until 6 months ago, I was living what I thought was a peaceful retirement in the house my late husband Robert and I bought 40 years ago. It's a beautiful colonial in one of the nicer neighborhoods, worth about $800,000 now, though we paid $85,000 for it back in 1984. Robert passed 3 years ago, and I'll admit, I've been struggling a bit since then. Some memory issues, getting confused about dates sometimes, forgetting where I put things. Nothing serious, just the normal stuff that happens when you get older. You know? My son David lives about 20 minutes away with his wife Christina. Now, Christina and I never really clicked from day one. She's one of those women who smiles to your face, but you can tell she's calculating something behind her eyes. David met her 8 years ago when he was going through his divorce, and she swooped in like she was rescuing him. Truth is, I think she saw a middle-aged man with a stable job and a mother who owned valuable real estate. After Robert died, Christina started coming around more often. At first, I thought maybe she was finally trying to bond with me, you know? She'd bring groceries, help me organize my medications, even convinced me to get one of those medical alert buttons, just in case. She was so concerned about my safety and kept pointing out little things, like how I sometimes forgot to lock the back door, or how I'd repeat stories I'd already told them. "Mom, we're just worried about you living alone in this big house," David would say, and Christina would nod along with this fake, concerned expression. "Maybe it's time to think about your options." Looking back, I should have seen what they were doing. They were building a case, documenting every little slip-up, every moment of confusion. Christina even started bringing her phone out during our conversations, claiming she wanted to help me remember what we talked about. But really, she was recording me at my worst moments. The manipulation got more intense over the months. They'd move things around in my house and then act concerned when I couldn't find them. "Oh, Mom, you put the coffee in the refrigerator again," Christina would say, shaking her head sadly. They'd ask me the same questions multiple times during a visit, then exchange those looks when I gave different answers. But here's the thing. I wasn't nearly as confused as they thought I was. See, my neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, has been my friend for 30 years. She's a retired police detective, sharp as a tack at 78, and she'd been watching what was happening. One day, she came over for coffee and said, "Margaret, I don't like what I'm seeing. Those two are running a game on you." That's when she suggested I start keeping my own records. She helped me set up a small digital recorder, nothing fancy, just something I could keep in my pocket. "Trust me," she said. "Document everything. Date, time, what was said. You might need it." So I started recording our conversations, not to be sneaky, but to protect myself. And boy, am I glad I did. Before I tell you this story, please subscribe, as it takes a lot of courage for me to share this. Your support means a lot to me. Let's dive back into the story. The breaking point came 3 months ago. I'd had a particularly bad day. Couldn't remember if I'd taken my morning pills, got confused about what day it was, that kind of thing. David and Christina came over that evening for what they called a family meeting. They sat me down in my own living room, and Christina actually sat in Robert's favorite chair, something she'd never done before. It felt like a power move, like she was claiming territory. "Mom," David started, "we've been talking, and we think it's time for you to consider moving somewhere with more support." Christina pulled out a folder. I swear she had it all planned out, filled with brochures for nursing homes. Not nice assisted living places, mind you, but the cheapest facilities she could find. Places with names like Sunset Manor and Golden Years Care that looked more like prisons than homes. "We've already toured these places," Christina said, spreading the brochures on my coffee table like she was showing me vacation destinations. "This one has a waiting list, but they might have an opening next month." I looked at the brochure she was pointing to. The room looked like a hospital room, tiny, sterile, with just enough space for a single bed and a chair. The monthly cost was $3,200. "I don't understand," I said. "I'm managing fine here. This is my home." That's when Christina's mask really slipped. "Margaret, let's be realistic. You can't take care of this house anymore. David and I have been talking about moving in here to help with the mortgage payments. It only makes sense. Moving in, not helping me stay. Moving in and putting me somewhere else." "The house payments?" I asked. "What house payments?" "Robert paid off the mortgage 15 years ago." David actually looked embarrassed, but Christina didn't miss a beat. "Well, there are still property taxes, utilities, maintenance. It's too much for you to handle. David and I could take over all of that, and you'd be so much happier somewhere with people your own age. People my own age. In other words, people waiting to die." I looked around my living room, at the family photos, Robert's books, the piano where I still played hymns on Sunday mornings. 40 years of memories, and they wanted to box it all up and stick me in a room smaller than my current bathroom. "What about my things?" I asked. Christina waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, we'll help you pick out the important stuff. These places only allow so much. But really, do you need all this? Most of it's just clutter anyway." Clutter? My entire life was clutter to her. That's when she really showed her true colors. "Look, Margaret, I know this is hard, but you have to face facts. You're not getting any younger. And frankly, you're becoming a liability. What if you fall? What if you leave the stove on? David and I can't be worried about you all the time. We have our own lives to live." A liability. That's what I was to them. "Besides," she continued, "it's not like you're using this whole house. David grew up here. He has just as much right to it as anyone. And my kids, well, they'll need somewhere to live when they visit their stepfather." Her kids, from her first marriage. Kids I'd met maybe 3 times in 8 years. I sat there, listening to them carve up my life like a Thanksgiving turkey, and something inside me just clicked into place. All those recordings Mrs. Patterson had encouraged me to make. All those little comments and manipulations. Suddenly, it all made sense. But I didn't let on. I just nodded and said, "Let me think about it." "Don't think too long, Mom," David said. "The place Christina likes might not hold the spot." After they left, I called Mrs. Patterson. She came right over, and we listened to the recording of that conversation. When Christina's voice came through the speaker, saying I was becoming a liability, Mrs. Patterson just shook her head. "Honey, they're trying to steal your house," she said, "and they're using elder abuse tactics to do it." That's when she told me something I didn't know. Mrs. Patterson had been keeping her own records, photos of David and Christina coming and going, times when they'd been in my house when I wasn't home. They had a key for emergencies, even recordings of them talking in my driveway about how much the house was worth. "They've been planning this for months," she said. "Maybe longer." The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my lawyer, not some young hotshot, but Harold Brennan, who'd handled Robert's estate and had been our family attorney for 20 years. Harold is 68 himself and doesn't tolerate nonsense. "Margaret," he said, after I told him what was happening, "do you want to fight this?" "Harold, I'm not going anywhere. This is my house, and I'm not letting them steal it from me." That's when Harold smiled, the kind of smile that meant someone was about to get exactly what they deserved. Here's what my loving family didn't know about me. Robert and I weren't just careful savers. Robert had a life insurance policy that paid out $500,000 when he died. But more than that, he'd set up a trust fund that I'd never touched, another $750,000 that was generating income I didn't even need. See, Robert had been through his own family drama when his first wife died. His kids from that marriage had tried to contest the will, claim he wasn't mentally competent when he married me. It got ugly, and Robert learned his lesson. He made sure I'd be protected no matter what. I also owned 3 rental properties that I'd inherited from my parents, properties that David didn't even know about because they were in a different county. Those were bringing in $4,200 a month, money I'd been quietly donating to charity because I didn't need it. But here's the kicker, and this is where Mrs. Patterson's detective skills really paid off. She'd noticed that Christina had been taking things from my house. Small things at first. A silver picture frame here, a piece of jewelry there. Things she thought I wouldn't miss because of my memory problems. Mrs. Patterson had been photographing Christina leaving my house with items, keeping a detailed log. We're talking about theft, systematic theft over months. Harold was practically rubbing his hands together. "Margaret, we don't just have a case here. We have a slam dunk." The plan was beautiful in its simplicity. We'd let David and Christina make their move, document everything, then spring the trap. 2 weeks later, they came back with papers. Christina had actually found a lawyer, some bottom feeder who specialized in elder care transitions, and they had documents declaring me mentally incompetent and David as my power of attorney. I played my part perfectly. I acted confused, a little scared, asked lots of questions, and I recorded every word. "Mom, this is for your own good," David kept saying, but Christina was doing most of the talking. "The paperwork is really just a formality," she said. "It protects you and makes sure someone responsible is making decisions. You trust David, don't you?" Of course I trusted David. He was my son. But trusting David and trusting Christina were 2 very different things. They wanted me to sign papers, giving David control of my finances and the right to make medical decisions. They also had a preliminary agreement to sell the house to themselves for $400,000, half its actual value, with the justification that it needed significant repairs, and they were taking a risk. I stared at that number, $400,000. They were trying to steal $400,000 from me, and they wanted me to thank them for it. I need to think about this, I said. Christina's patience finally snapped. Margaret, stop being difficult. You don't have a choice here. Look around. You can barely take care of yourself. Yesterday, you called David asking where Robert was. Robert's been dead for 3 years. That was a lie, by the way. I never called asking about Robert, but it sounded good for their story. You're going to sign these papers, she continued, and you're going to move to Sunset Manor next week. David's already put down a deposit. This house is going to be ours, and there's nothing you can do about it. There it was, the truth, finally. Not, we're worried about you, or this is for your own good. Just raw greed and cruelty. And if I don't sign? I asked quietly. Christina leaned forward, and her voice got cold. Then we'll have you declared mentally incompetent by a judge. David will testify about your condition. We have recordings of you being confused. And honestly, who's going to believe a confused old woman over her devoted son and daughter-in-law? She actually smiled when she said it. That night, I called Harold. It's time, I said. The next morning, Harold filed for an emergency restraining order against David and Christina, along with criminal complaints for elder abuse, theft, fraud, and conspiracy. We had everything: the recordings, Mrs. Patterson's photographs, financial records showing the systematic theft, and expert testimony about the real value of my house. But we weren't done. Harold also filed a civil lawsuit for damages, not just for what they'd stolen, but for emotional distress, attempted fraud, and punitive damages. We were going after everything they had. The restraining order was granted immediately. David and Christina were prohibited from coming to my house, contacting me, or attempting to access any of my financial accounts. But here's my favorite part. Harold arranged for the sheriff to serve the papers at Christina's work. She was a receptionist at a dental office, and according to the sheriff, she made quite a scene when she realized what was happening. Started screaming about how I was senile and didn't know what I was doing. Her boss heard the whole thing. Apparently, having your employee served with elder abuse papers isn't great for a medical practice's reputation. She was fired that afternoon. David called me that night, crying. Mom, I don't understand what's happening. We were just trying to help you. But I wasn't buying it anymore. David, I have recordings of Christina saying she was going to take my house, whether I liked it or not. I have photos of her stealing from me. I have documentation of everything you two have been doing. The silence on the other end was deafening. I love you, David, I continued, but you chose her over me. You were willing to throw your own mother away for a house and money. That's something I can't forgive. The legal proceedings moved fast. Christina's lawyer, the bottom feeder, dropped her as a client the moment he realized how much evidence we had. David couldn't afford his own attorney, so he got a public defender who took one look at the case and advised him to plea bargain. The criminal charges were serious. Elder abuse is a felony in our state, and with the systematic nature of what they'd done, they were looking at real prison time. But it was the civil case that really got their attention. Harold had calculated damages at $2.3 million. The theft, the attempted fraud, the emotional distress, plus punitive damages designed to send a message. Christina owned a small condo that she'd bought before marrying David. David had some savings and a decent car. Together, they might have had $150,000 in assets. They were looking at financial ruin. That's when Christina made her biggest mistake. She tried to contact me directly in violation of the restraining order. She showed up at my house at 11 p.m., pounding on the door, screaming about how I was destroying her family and how David's kids from his first marriage would hate me forever. Mrs. Patterson called the police, and I got the whole thing on my security camera. Christina was arrested for violating the restraining order, and her bail was revoked. Sitting in jail gave her time to think. Her lawyer called Harold with a settlement offer. They'd plead guilty to all charges, pay full restitution for what they'd stolen, and agree to never contact me again. In exchange, we'd drop the civil lawsuit. Harold looked at me. "It's your call, Margaret. We can take them for everything, or we can end this now." I thought about it for a long time. Part of me wanted to destroy them completely, the way they'd tried to destroy me. But another part of me, the part that raised David, that loved him despite everything, just wanted it to be over. "I want them to admit what they did," I said finally, publicly. "I want everyone to know the truth." So that's what happened. David and Christina had to appear in court and admit, on the record, that they had conspired to defraud me, that they had systematically stolen from me, and that they had attempted to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could steal my house. The local newspaper covered the story. Son and daughter-in-law convicted of elder abuse scheme. It wasn't front page news, but it was there in black and white for everyone to see. Christina got 6 months in jail and 3 years probation. David got probation and community service. The judge was more lenient with him because he testified that Christina had been the driving force behind the scheme. They had to pay $47,000 in restitution for what they'd stolen, plus court costs and my legal fees. But more than that, David lost his job. He worked for a financial services company, and having an elder abuse conviction doesn't look good when you're supposed to be helping people manage their money. Christina couldn't find work anywhere in town after her story became public. They ended up moving 3 states away, and I haven't heard from them since. The house is still mine, of course. I'm still living here, still managing just fine with Mrs. Patterson, checking on me and my weekly housekeeper, helping with the big cleaning. My memory issues? Funny how they seemed to improve once I wasn't being constantly gaslit and manipulated. Harold helped me set up a proper estate plan, one that's bulletproof this time. I've left the house to a charity that helps seniors stay in their homes. David won't get a penny, but that's his choice. He chose Christina over his mother, and choices have consequences. I also started volunteering with the county's Adult Protective Services program. Turns out, my story isn't unusual. There are a lot of Christinas out there, and a lot of families who see their elderly relatives as nothing more than ATMs or obstacles to inheritance. I speak at community centers now, telling seniors how to protect themselves. I show them how to document conversations, how to recognize the warning signs of financial abuse, how to get help when their own families turn against them. The most important thing I tell them is this: you are not a burden. You are not too old to matter. Your life has value. Your home is yours. And you don't owe anyone your dignity just because they share your DNA. Mrs. Patterson and I have become even closer friends. She jokes that we should start a detective agency for seniors. And honestly, I'm not sure she's entirely kidding. We've helped 3 other neighbors deal with similar family situations. And word is getting around that we don't mess around when it comes to protecting our community. People ask me if I miss David, and the truth is complicated. I miss the son I thought I had, the son I raised to be honest and caring. But that son disappeared the day he decided his mother was worth more to him as a real estate transaction than as a person. The David who conspired with Christina to steal my home and throw me away? I don't miss him at all. I'm 72 years old. I own my house free and clear. I have more money than I'll ever need, and I'm surrounded by friends who actually care about me. I spend my days reading, playing piano, gardening, and helping other seniors protect themselves from the Christinas of the world. Christina thought she was so smart, manipulating a confused old woman. She thought she'd found the perfect victim. She was wrong on both counts. And you know what the best part is? I sleep like a baby every night, in my own bed, in my own house, surrounded by 40 years of memories that no one can take away from me. Christina's sleeping in a studio apartment 3 states away, still trying to explain to potential employers why she has an elder abuse conviction on her record. Justice has a funny way of working out, doesn't it? If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you have family members who are trying to convince you that you're too old, too confused, too much of a burden to deserve respect, please know that you have options, you have rights, and you have more power than they want you to believe. Don't let anyone convince you that love means giving up everything you've worked for. Real love doesn't ask you to sacrifice your dignity, your independence, or your home just to make someone else's life easier. And if you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in Christina or David's behavior, if you're the one pushing an elderly relative toward decisions that benefit you more than them, stop. Just stop. Because someday you're going to be the one who's older, who needs help, who's vulnerable. And your children are watching how you treat their grandparents. They're learning what happens when you get old in your family. Trust me, you don't want them to learn the lesson Christina taught. The truth always comes out in the end. And karma has a very long memory.